Hello, and welcome to Snide's Return, a tabletop roleplay podcast. My guest today has welcomed the internet to their gaming table over 600 times in various ways. Not one to shy away from an adventure, they are often found taking deep dives into different worlds. A traveller, one may say. But what of all this? Well, far from being a jack of all trades, he has proven his pen as mighty as any sword. It would surely be an unkindness not to mention his literary works, to steal from, well, not your average content creator. So here today to take the jump and avoid any intimate encounters is Dungeon Master, Games Master, streamer, YouTuber, TTRPG content creator, podcaster, and writer, Seth Skorkowsky. Seth, welcome to the show.
Wow, that was one hell of an intro. I'm like intimidated by myself right now. Like, wow, you make me sound awesome. But thank you for having me.
No, it's an absolute pleasure. And as I say, welcome. Before we go into some of the things I've alluded to there in the introduction, would you mind letting us know a little bit about yourself and how you got into tabletop role-playing games, please?
Well, I'd first heard about D&D through, of course, the Satanic Panic. And, it was the game that drove you insane and made you kill people. And I was actually in one of the deep in the kind of American Bible Belt. So, I heard a lot of that. In fact, the wonderful book, The Devil's Web by Patricia Pulling. I remember I got my copy and opened it up. It was like published in Tyler, Texas, which is where I grew up. So it was like, oh, yeah, that fits. So I had actually believed it was illegal. Like it was this game that was so bad, they outlawed it. And when I was 12, I remember I was talking with my friend Aaron Bush, and we were kind of doing that. Like, man, it would be really cool. Is like try that D&D thing out, because you're 12 and you're like, I want to do immediately the thing that I'm told not to do.
Mm-hmm.
And I was at school. We had a little homeroom where they gave these little magazines of whatever the hell it is they think 12-year-old kids would like. And there was a full page ad for the new D&D box set. I guess it was the black box. It was like their last basic box set, and it had the big dragon. It's like, it's back. And I remember rushing to my friend Aaron Bush to tell him, it's like, dude, they made D&D legal again. So shortly after that was my 13th birthday, and I got that for my 13th birthday. Then shortly after that, we're all in Boy Scouts. So I was at a scout meeting talking with a buddy about like, man, we're gonna do this D&D thing. Yeah, I've played the little game in there, and I mentioned something about elves, and this kid, I'm 13. He was a kid, like 11, like a million years younger than you, right? And he's like, that's not how elves work. And I found out that he played Advanced Dungeons and Dragons, and his dad, who was one of the assistant scout masters, had been playing since the 70s, and he offered to run us, and that became our group for the next, I don't know, until we were all 18 and moved away. So that was it. So I played basically basic D&D once, and then it was straight into AD&D. And second edition had just released around that time, but our GM's like, I've already got all the books. I'm not buying new books, so go to used bookstores and buy the old ones, because I'm not changing all this money's worth of stuff. So we started with AD&D first edition, and then with our own groups that we were playing on the side or after that, we kind of bled in a lot of second edition, because there really wasn't too many changes between them. They were mostly compatible, and that's pretty much it. I went off to college, made a couple guys in a group. Our official founding of that group in college was January whatever day in 99. And out of the 7 players that I had, so it was 8 of us in my tiny little apartment, 3 of them still play with me.
Wow.
So we've been playing together a long time. Our new guy, I think, started in 2009. So
I mean, that's still a long time from 2009 to present.
Yeah, we've had some new guys in the middle. So whenever someone leaves, and so I was like, "Hey, George, you're the new guy again." He's like, "Dang it!" Then we'll pull somebody else in. And in fact, actually, one of the players from the early days is actually the new guy. He left years ago, and he just came back. But I still want to give my buddy George grief, because technically, the other guy has actually played with me longer and linear time. So.
I love it. And so this gaming group, it gets mentioned in your YouTube video. So before I skip that straight to that, how did you go from running games, these long-standing games? How did that go into the content creator you are today on the various platforms?
Well, so it started with, I'm an author, and I got my, I finally wrote my first publishable book, not counting the practice novels before that, which were terrible. And when your book comes out, all of a sudden you're flooded with like how you have to have a social media presence, and you have to do all this. You have to market yourself, and which is really awkward for considering it's a demographic of people that usually like to hide out and not talk to people. And I was told by someone who's actually like really big marketing guy how I need to have a YouTube channel. It's the second largest search engine, and I need to have a channel. And I was like, I don't. What the hell would I make a channel about? He's like, well, make it about your book. It's like, well, that would be a short-lived channel because he's like, go make it about writing. It's like, I've written one book. That's not really uh, qualifications. I mean, Brandon Sanderson has like his own YouTube channel. He's written like 9 million novels, so it's not like I couldn't really add anything. So I sat on that idea for 2.5 years. And then one day I decided to make a YouTube channel. And basically, I wanted to post a video about the social contract. So I just kind of became Tabletop RPGs. I know a lot about that, and I enjoy talking about that. So it uh, it was a bug that was put in my ear, but it took 2.5 years to actually like hatch into something.
Wow. I mean, I'm glad it did because I love your stuff. And just some stats to throw back at you of how much I sort of enjoyed it. I haven't watched all of these. I will, but you've released on your YouTube channel 635 videos. I counted them up from your window. You have over 99,000 subscribers, over 14 million views of your videos, plus all the things you're associated with, plus the stuff on, say, drive-through and things like that we'll get to shortly. So how has it been with
I can't have 600 videos. There's no way.
yeah,
Hold on. There's things. Sometimes you black out. You like you might miss 100, but it's like no way because I think I'm at 200 and something.
that's
So maybe if you're checking playlists, like certain videos are in multiple playlists.
okay. Well, across your playlists, then people have
Ah,
access to them.
okay.
In total, you can view 635 videos.
Yeah, it's quite a bit.
Yeah. And you've covered such a variety of game systems. Where did the idea to drop into separate game systems come from after the social contract?
Well, it started with at the time that we were there, or sorry, that I started doing the videos. We had been playing Call of Cthulhu. In fact, I think I just purchased Pulp Cthulhu, and one of my earliest videos was like the box opening for Pulp Cthulhu. And I had played Cyberpunk 2020 and a couple other games. I actually was not, I guess, as versed as I think a lot of people assumed I was. But the first game review I did was Cyberpunk 2020. So I actually started with non D&D or non mainstream material, and it was a terrible review. I didn't even know how to edit yet. It was all one take. I think I had a post-it note that was like all my notes for it, so it's full of as I'm trying to articulate thoughts. Camera was crap. Audio was just abysmally. It should have been illegal. It was that bad. And so I came back a while later and I redid that. I've redone a couple of videos for my first 6 months because man, they hurt. If somebody comments on it, it's like, oh geez, so many people are watching this. Like that could still be someone's first impression of me. Those are terrible. But so I started with Cyberpunk, and then I started talking about scenario reviews. And Call of Cthulhu, I actually ran a ton of scenarios. D&D I'd ran some, but that was mostly stuff I wrote myself for many years. So then I kind of started working the scenario reviews and this and that. So it kind of just evolved. I think a lot more channels come in with more of a plan. I didn't come in with a plan, so it just happened.
So, as you grew in confidence and competency and learn where did Jack the NPC and these other creative choices, where were they sparked from?
Well, they're sparked out of necessity. So I had envisioned early into my channel, I wanted to do a video for the post-apocalyptic Cthulhu setting, and I was like, what I'll do is I'll have it, and then it'll kind of like change to this kind of blasted landscape. I'll do it. I need a green screen for that. So we're getting close to Christmas. My channel started at the end of November, and we're getting close to Christmas. So this is all in the first month of this thing. There's sales, so I'm like, I'll go on and I'll buy a green screen, and it's one of those things where you keep kind of slowly upgrading. It's like, for another dollar, you can get 20 more square feet. Oh, okay. For another dollar, you can get 30 more square feet. Oh, okay. So I ended up with this $18 green screen that is big enough to sail a ship with. It is, I have no idea what the hell I was thinking. It is so ridiculously huge. I've never employed the whole thing. It's like half of it's on the floor whenever I set it up. And at the time, you monetized your YouTube channel immediately. So it told you how much you made. So I'd bust my butt putting out a video. It's like, wow, the video made 3 cents. Oh, well, at this rate, it'll take me, 60 years to pay off this $18 green screen. I need to come up with another use for this thing versus one video. And I was doing a review for the Call of Cthulhu scenario, The Haunting. And I wanted to talk about what I did to teach my players how to play investigative games. And I did that through an NPC who in our game was named Jack. So I grabbed a suit and a fedora that I had lying around the house. I gave myself this really gruff voice. That was actually a lot gruffer in the beginning because I didn't know I was committing to it for life. And I just did this little bit where I did this Jack the NPC character. And that was supposed to be it. Like I wasn't supposed to go back to it. And I did like a couple more videos and it's like, man, that was actually kind of fun to do. And it also really worked because I could have a bit of a dynamic or kind of cut the monotony of I'm talking for a long time on a subject. So then I started pulling Jack in more and more and more till he kind of became a staple of reviews. And then the gang, which is the kind of unimaginative name I gave my imaginary players, it came about because I was doing, I guess it was one of my early RPG philosophy videos, my first list video, and it was over like 5 bad player behaviors. And there was this kind of bit that we have done for years talking about what we refer to as a 13th warrior, and reference to the movie and the book about the guy that wants to play the Arab poet in the Viking campaign, and just how ridiculous that was. That was a back and forth that we have joked around the table with for years. So I was like, okay, so I actually want to do this in a video form. So at the time I had long hair. I just let my hair down. I put a baseball cap on backwards, and I talked to this kind of like silly voice. And it was kind of the same thing. I was like, that was fun. I'll keep using this guy. And he didn't even have a name. And then a video came along. I needed him to talk to someone next to him. Like I needed 2 players to talk. So I kind of just I found this bandito mustache beard set, like a one-time use for like a birthday party sort of thing. And I was like, oh, I'll buy this, and now I've got a mustache and this goatee, and I'll split them up, and I have to come up with 2 distinctly different characters. And so I did that. And at none of these points had I realized this was now like a thing I was committing to. Like it was always like, oh, I'll pull that thing back. I'll pull that thing back. But I'm not, this isn't a thing that I do. It's just for this next video.
Yeah.
And so I think it took me a year before I even named them. Like their older videos are calling player 1, 2, and 3. Like they didn't even have names. And then finally just had to admit they're a thing that I do. But there was no plan or anything. It was just kind of necessity or moments of inspiration. If had I known that they were going to be kind of long-term commitments, I certainly would have. I wouldn't have given Dweebles that hair, man. I really hate doing that hair. That's why some videos like he might not even appear, because it's I really hate that outfit because it requires I have to do my hair this certain way with a ton of gel, and it's really gross. So had I known, he would have been a totally different person.
No, I love Jack and the gaming group and the way that your presentation, both your more straight down the line conveyance of information as yourself, and then the spin, as it were, as either Jack, or the interplay between the party really does actually help explain or expand on elements of games that may have been more difficult to understand if it was just a sort of single person, single perspective.
And they're meant to inject a little bit of humor, but also kind of serve as like that example. Actually, I feel kind of bad. Like I'm working on a video right now, which is about tabletop stuff. It's like, wow, there's not really a natural spot that I can work the gang in. Which I think I've had a couple of those where people, well, viewers will come on and say, "Where's the gang?" It's like they didn't actually add anything. Like I'm not just gonna have a random skit for no reason.
Mm.
I'm like I'm always looking for a reason, but if I ain't got one, I ain't using them. So it's they're fun to illustrate a point or just add a shot of humor because sometimes like I'll be talking about something and it might be dry or it might be a very serious topic and it's kind of that reminder of like, guys, we're talking about sitting around with your friends doing imagination time, right? Rolling little pieces of plastic, and it's silly. The gaming is silly. Just there's no way around it. No matter how serious people want to take it, at the end of the day, it is a silly hobby.
Yeah, no, it's one we enjoy though. So it's just kind of living there in the moment. But you have reviewed a variety of systems, but just going through the channel and listening to you going through your Twitter, Traveller and Call of Cthulhu seem to be the ones that sort of resonate with you the most. Your favourite systems, is that fair to say, or have you got other ones that you just don't sort of partake in as often?
Um, Call of Cthulhu and Traveler are the top two. The Call of Cthulhu system, the BRP system, especially with what they did with Second Edition, is so intuitive for us. We love those types of stories, the investigative plots and that sort of thing. So mechanically and just thematically, that's been an absolute perfect fit for us.
Mm,
And especially the Pulp Cthulhu mod, because that allows your characters to be a bit beefier, because sometimes you really do just want to kick some ass. And so it allows that while still being very fragile and focusing more on investigation.
mm,
And all of my games have always at some point gone horror. So the fact that it's a horror game, it's not much worse than when we were doing other things.
mm,
And Traveler really did hit the the tones that we wanted with a good sci-fi game. A lot of the stuff that we got out of when we played Cyberpunk for years and years, but then we had to house rule the hell out of it because a lot of the old Cyberpunk was very broken.
mm,
Um, you Traveler fits almost every single one of those needs, and all the mechanical ones. The only ones are just some of the thematic ones. And but we're like, yeah, we could add the themes to the game. Like that's not a problem. We just don't play it that way.
yeah,
So those two, my players have even said like, if these are the only two games we ever play, like going forward, we'd be perfectly happy with that.
yeah,
So those are really kind of the ones that sit the best.
yeah, absolutely. So before I sort of carry on that train of thought, so people can find you and support you and come and sort of get involved with everything that you do, would you be able to uh, tell us where we can find you and everything you're associated with, please?
Well, my YouTube channel is under the highly imaginative name Seth Skorkowsky. Everybody has like a cool name but me, and the reason was it was supposed to help marketing my writing originally, so I wanted it to be linked to my name instead of some clever channel name.
Mm.
But now that the YouTube and tabletop RPG stuff has actually kind of crested past my writing, it's like, well, I still just have this channel name, and that's the way it is. You can find me at Seth Skorkowsky on YouTube. The only thing you have to do is figure out how to spell my name. But once you know how to spell my name or copy it from somewhere, you can find me everywhere. So I'm on Twitter as S Skorkowsky, and that's the social media platform that I'm the most active on. Uh, because a lot of people are like, on your Instagram or Facebook, it's like Twitter is kind of the one that I chose as I'm most comfortable with. And after that, I've got my website, Skorkowsky.com, but there's not much that's been going on there because that was more about my writing, and the YouTube's really where I've been focusing. So that's pretty much it. Oh, and I have a podcast. There's the Modern Mythos podcast that I do with John Hook. And he's the far more experienced podcaster, but he's written for Call of Cthulhu and Dungeon Call Classics and all these games. So we do a monthly podcast about RPGs, mostly Call of Cthulhu, but a lot of other stuff as well. Because I kind of insisted, like, we need to talk about a lot of games because I like a lot of different stuff. So Modern Mythos podcast, Twitter, YouTube, those are the big three.
All right. Well, links to those places will be in the description below this podcast. Also, touching on your writing, both the TTRPG side and your more general fantasy writing, should we say, will be down in the description below. And going on that theme, on Drive-Thru RPG, for example, we can find a number of supplements that you have either written yourself or partaken in. What's it been like to contribute to the TTRPG community in that way, and winning an Emmy award as well?
Well, man, it's been weird. So the first one was Stygian Fox reached out to me to be part of the new Tales in the Miskatonic Valley, and it's absolutely will always be eternally grateful to Stephanie for that. And she asked me to do a story in Innsmouth, and I gladly did that. Then that book went on to win an Emmy award, but so technically, I'm a two-time Emmy winner. I don't count that one as much because that was a huge group project because it was just for the book. So I was like, well, you got a lot of authors, you got all of the illustrators and editors and all this. So it's like I was just in a huge group project, and my part didn't suck so bad that it dragged everybody else down. It's kind of how I see it. So that was cool, and then that led to I'm in the Chaosium. I'm in the Keeper Tips book that they did for the 40th anniversary. And then when I started doing stuff with Traveller, uh, I, I headed up two projects to take an old classic adventure, update it to the new edition, and I was given free reign to change anything I wanted. They were like, nothing is sacred, just go for it.
Wow.
But I was like, well, I wouldn't have signed on these projects if I didn't think they were already close to perfect. So I'm not going to be changing too terribly much. But then I got to add my own scenario to the classic Murder in Arcturus Station as a prequel. So that's kind of like a double adventure book with mine and the my update to J. Andrew Keith's classic adventure. So that's been great. But I'm enjoying the hell out of it.
Yeah, I can imagine. And for Call of Cthulhu, your modern Mythos has Mythos artifacts, which we failed to mention thus far, but has a Patreon if you want to support Seth and John that way.
That's with our the Modern Mythos Patreon. We're backers. So John and I, basically over the course of a year, we're coming up with cool artifacts, and then it was almost like those old Mad Libs games. I don't know if you had those when you were young, where it's like you put in just a blank for names and stuff, and you ask somebody like, give me a name, give me an adverb, and you fill it all in. And so we did it with these kind of blanks, and we're going to name these after our Patreons. And then at the end of the year, we're going to put these in a book, and we're going to send those to our patrons. So all the names in there are either of our patrons or what our patrons asked for us to use. But just over the course, you have some idea, like, it'd be really cool is like, what about this weird old whistle they found in the trenches of the First World War? That was one of those kind of homemade ones the soldiers did, but it does this weird thing. So I'd kind of like jot down my notes, and then John would add his a little bit. And at the end of the year, we had a pretty big list. So that was cool. So that's a neat little book we've got on Miskatonic Repository, kind of where that came from.
Yeah, but it's sort of inspiring and inspirational for use for keepers. And I mean, you can take these artifacts and put them in any game, I guess, but they are more Cthulhu sort of Eldritch based.
Yeah, and actually, like, I think one of them I'm definitely stealing for a Colt game I got coming up because it was like, man, this is too good.
I mean, you recently did a review on, and this is a time recording, the exhibition. Sorry,
Atrocity Exhibition.
The Atrocity Exhibition. Loved it, and it sounds like the sort of thing that I would love to run. It's just the thing with Colt, and you mentioned it in your review of the system. It's finding the right group to play that with. So what's it like sort of balancing that against, say, the other games that you enjoy?
Well, so Colt is. If I was going to list like my top favorite games right now, of course, Traveler and Call of Cthulhu, Pulp Cthulhu and Call of Cthulhu, I lump together. Colt is really, really, really in close to that third spot. It might be the third spot. It's a game I'm still really trying to get myself comfortable with because the Powered by the Apocalypse system is so different than all the ways we've played before. So we did have a case of a lot of old dogs, new tricks
Mm,
things. So, and it's a system that I would not really recommend to people that are not, I guess, have absolute trust. If you've got like players that are going to try to like kind of work the system,
mm,
kind of your rules lawyer types, Powered by the Apocalypse is not it because it is so loose and it kind of requires everybody's mature and on board.
mm,
Then you have Cult and their swing of it. So then you've got the themes of Cult, which is a very personal horror, and so between them, it is the most mature audiences only game I've ever played.
mm,
Uh, so out of our group, there's only 3 players that I would play that with. Um, and because we've all got a great dynamic, we all have our, we know where each other's lines are, and we're totally comfortable with each other, and we have absolute trust, and we also are eager to lean into the horrific and weird and dark
mm,
subjects. So I don't have to worry about that. I don't have to worry about anybody getting upset or anybody getting weird on us or
mm,
any of that. It's like we're just a bunch of old friends. If anybody wants to nope out or that, or if anybody's pushing it too far, we all will voice up. There's no
yeah,
hesitation
no,
because we're like family.
mm,
Um, then I've loved it. It is a very serious game. When we play it, we're dead serious. Like we've got these characters in their lives, and it's like a drama, a
mm,
horror drama. And then you got Pulp Cthulhu, where it's like we're rapid firing jokes and we're laughing our butts off. So totally different experience
mm,
altogether. So it's not even, I guess, technically Call of Cthulhu is a horror game. We treat it like a detective investigative game.
yeah.
Cold, we treat like a horror game. So totally different feels around the table.
Yeah, yeah. For anyone that's unaware, Helmgast release a version of Cult that you can buy through various game stores that looks like a Bible. I've got the fourth edition version that looks like a Bible. It's got the black case, the gilded gold gilded. Oh, it's a beautiful book. Doesn't come with
I've got
illustrations,
one.
but it's a beautiful book. Go on.
I don't know how useful that thing is in game, like because there's no illustrations. It's a little, but it's very it looks and feels like a Bible. I will say that with the horror RPGs, they have really upped the quality of the books
Mm.
further than anyone. Like I remember somebody was pitching some D&D book, and they're like, "It's got a ribbon." I'm like, oh wow. Everybody else has had ribbons for like a decade, man. And but meanwhile, then you keep going into like the horror section, and the most beautiful books I own are all in that genre.
Mm.
One game that I want to play, very much want to play, and I bought it because I'd heard good things, but I saw it in a store, and it was one of those like it jumped out at me. I was like, my God, that book is gorgeous. Is Bluebeard's Bride, and if you have ever seen physical copies of that book, it is it's got gold foil accents on it. Like photos can't even capture it. It's one of those like
Wow.
this book is amazingly
Oh
pretty,
wow.
and everything about it is just super high quality.
Mm.
You pick it up and you're like, oh, this is a forbidden game. Uh, um, wonderful, wonderful. Compared to like the old days where it's like the cover was color and inside it was all black and white, and the art was of widely varying quality.
Mm.
And now, then we went to a few color pictures, and now they're all color. And then this one's like, okay, now we're going to do metallic inks. Or do you have the full size Cult book?
I don't. Just I have the PDF because they're good enough to
Ah,
include the PDF. So I've got the PDF so I can see all the images, but the
Have you seen the message that's actually along the side of the pages?
I may have to
So,
reinvestigate.
yeah, so if you take the full book and you do the thing where you lean the pages just a bit, a message appears that just says, "Death is only the beginning."
Wow.
Um,
It's amazing.
next level RPG stuff.
That's
It's like now
amazing.
there's hidden messages. You have to move the books in certain ways. It's great. Love it.
That's so you've picked up a couple of books off your desk there. I can see more on the shelves behind you, the helmet and a few of the other props. Are you very much still using the sort of the pen and paper, a more tactile approach, or do you use sort of virtual tabletops from time to time? Where does your DMing style sort of land?
Um, well,
GMing,
of
let's
course,
say.
during the pandemic, we had to adapt to
Mm,
online. I mean, that was absolute necessity for that. Um, and I have been doing online gaming with different groups, podcasts that I've been with, the How We Roll, now Glass Cannon, or various little games that just different people we've played online, and that's been fun. It's cool. I get to play with people in other countries, and that's
mm,
awesome. I've loved that, but we prefer around the table. We prefer the full experience. Online gaming will never be able to compete with that. Um, uh, One of the biggest things that we also just really loved about being in person is if I can have my attention, I can talk to somebody at the table, either his character's doing solo or he's just asking questions about what's in the shop, whatever. I can be talking to one player and then two other players on the other side of the table might be whispering back and forth, kind of like, okay, so what is it we're going to do when we get to this place? Or hey, can you show me how this spell works? Or just some sort of little chit chat. When you're online, you're all sharing an audio channel, so you have to like wait for each person to talk only once. Well, in a game, there's actually a couple conversations going on. And as the
mm.
GM, even though I'm talking with one person, I still kind of have like an ear out. And I might be like, wait, hold on, you need to check the back of the book if you want to get the price on that or something. And I can go back to it. And that's just the difference between being on the phone with somebody versus in a group call versus just
Yeah.
everybody there. And then, of course, there's just the energy and everything. So when we play in person, our games go twice as long as we're capable of online. So in person, we do once a month, and it's 8 to 10 hours. It's like a full day event. It's got a dinner and a lunch and tons of snacks, and we all catch up, and it's a great time. When we did it online, it was like at 4 hours, we are all about ready to punch out.
Yeah. Okay.
Um, and it was really, really hollow. But and so once we all got vaccinated, we were so excited to get back in the room together and have our little toy cars on a table. All the classic stuff.
Absolutely. Yeah. No, no, that's fair enough. And it's one thing I've missed due to work and other commitments, is sort of getting around the table and having that sort of more, dare I say it, personal experience that you get sharing the room, sharing the table, than you do across sort of whichever your virtual tabletop of choice is, or uh, platform, should we say.
Yeah, and like I said, I have had so much fun with the virtual tabletop, but man, if I could do it in person, any day. It's it's better than nothing, and it's got a lot of cool features. But now around the table is our thing. So, like when in my videos, where I'm sitting, this is actually where my GM seat is at the end
Mm,
of the table. And when you watch the gang stuff, where Todd is quite literally what the other end of the table looks like. That's my view from here.
yeah.
Is exactly that wall of curtains with the other bookshelves and
Yeah.
stuff like that. So we when we got this house, we had this room that was our game room, as our kind of little shrine to gaming, and that's it. So then we had like 2 years. It was like our junk room
Mm.
or slash studio. So I had to like one half was always filthy. So whichever one I was filming on, I had to move incredible piles of crap to the other side. And then once finally we had games in person again, it was like my wife and I are like, what the hell are we going to do with this shifting pile of crap that has like
Mm.
slowly acclimated in this room? So I'm happy we're back together. So I got to purge a lot of stuff.
Mm. Yeah, no, it's great that you've been able to get back around the table, and as the pandemic, depending on when you're listening to this, may or may not still be affecting various people's lives. The fact we can get back around the table is brilliant. More of a insular, somewhat personal pursuit is your writing that we can enjoy to ourselves. Your books available on Amazon. There will be a link in the description below, as well as other resources potentially. So, what is it like going from TTRPG stuff to, say, Tales of the Black Raven and the books you released through that series, or one of your other series?
As in writing, or you want me to like
Yeah,
tell you what
as
they're
a
about?
creative, both from a
Um,
story and setting and a creative process.
well, for gaming, whenever I'm doing that, it's also one of the things. Actually, working on a video on this exact subject right now is so a game master builds situations, and then the players figure out the solutions. So a lot of what a GM does is I'm doing all the setup, I'm doing all the backstory, I'm doing all this, and go, and just sees what happens. You're
Mm.
building your obstacle course, but the moment that you put whatever is going through the obstacle course in there, their job is kind of done, with the exception of I just have to keep them from like setting it on fire. Um, with writing, it's this kind of this personal thing. You do it by yourself, and you do it all. You've got your plot, and this is what our characters do, and the conversations, and all that stuff. And a lot of people really like to think they're a lot alike. Like, oh, being a dungeon master is like being an author. It's like, no, not at all. But it's a very different experience. They actually scratch very different creative itches for me.
Okay.
um, and the YouTube videos actually kind of scratch the same itches as writing, where I've got this kind of project that I'm doing for till 3 o'clock in the morning sometimes, and it's kind of like my thing that I do,
Mm.
and I have total control over the whole thing. And if you don't like something, you can go back and you can edit it, and all this stuff you don't really get to do in a tabletop game, and then you kind of release it out in the world, and then immediately have the first person that comments on it be like, it's crap. And and then you get to have that crushing self-loathing. So it's a lot like writing. Yeah, that got dark right there at the end.
It did.
um,
But your themes are somewhat dark. So you have Ashes of Onyx, you have the Vidalcan books, you have the Tales of the Black Raven, uh, Aaron, Aaron the Thief.
yeah, so I started with the Black Raven, and those actually I would do in moments of writer's block when I was working on the novel that was unpublishable. Is I did these just kind of very pulpy sword and sorcery thief adventures, and I ended up selling those to a small magazine. A few went through them, and then a couple others went through different venues. And finally, we just kind of compiled them together and released them as these two collections. So they're kind of in an order, but they're really a lot of independent stories that follow this, and it's very uh, I don't know. I kind of ran down the list of like tropes where it's like, okay, there's going to be the femme fatale love interest, because there has to be the femme fatale love interest. She's going to have red hair because she has to have red hair. Like that's the type of stories there are. They're fun little yarns, kind of like my love letters to Fritz Leiber and Lankmar and all that, because Lankmar was my favorite of all the AD&D world settings. Everybody had their ones that they gravitated to. Mine was
Mm.
the Lankmar City of Adventure setting. And then the Valdigan series is modern day monster hunters, very uh, action, and those are four kind of self-contained novels. So it's not like one book spread out across 4 volumes. It's just, each of them are separate. They each follow a different protagonist, and the books are actually named after their weapon, because they have to have these kind of magic sentient weapons to do the hunts. And each of those, because I don't get bored, each of them follows a very different theme. So the first one is kind of like this international action adventure, and then the second one is this New Orleans noir horror. Uh, like the third is, it's got a huge romance subplot, and
Mm.
the fourth is this coming of age story. because I want them to always feel very, very different, even though they're in a linear order. Like, so book three, we'll talk about, oh, yeah, when this stuff happened, and reference book one and two. But there's still also, you could start with that book and everything you need to know about the previous books, it'll tell you in it.
Yeah.
So those were a lot of fun. And then Ashes of Onyx was the book that I really wrote for me. And that is it's such a weird book, but that is one where I actually have a lot of odes to some of my favorite novels that inspired me. But it is technically a new weird is the genre. So it starts off urban fantasy, like modern day sorceresses and sorcerers living in the contemporary world, but then they end up like hopping into other planes and other worlds, and then I pull in the King in Yellow Carcosa mythology, and our hero begins as a drug addict, and it gets dark, and that's the book that I wrote for me. Um, but it's so weird. It was very difficult trying to pitch that one because, like, so what's this again? Like, well, it's like a Magica meets the Dark Tower, but kind of interpreted through Neuromancer. Like, you just said three totally unrelated things. Like, yeah,
But it's going to be great.
and it's got Carcosa, and they're like, Car what? Like, so.
Yeah. So what? And then so you've written, so that book was for you. There's the short tales, the short pulpy tales, and the Tales of the Black Raven, and the Fedolkin books. What about the Snafu books?
Those are anthologies that are put out by Cohesion Press, which is an Australian publisher, and so they like to like the Snafu Hunters and Snafu Black Ops and all this. Actually, some of those actually were purchased, and you can find them in Love, Death, and Robots because Tim Miller is a huge fan of the Snafu series. So I did two stories with them, and they're actually in the Valdekin series, but they're kind of like these short stories in that world of these kind of first person field reports. So those are my contributions. I'm actually in three Snafu books, but the same story appears in two because we did one is a kind of a fundraiser book. Because there's an author in the community who's is cancer treatment, so but it's three books, but it's only two stories. But because one of them is in Snafu Medevac, which was basically they reached out to us and it's like, does anybody want to be involved? Like, absolutely. So, but that was just the where you can find a couple side Vulcan stories.
So that's where people can find things of yours to read. They've got your YouTube channel for things to watch. But watching you play, are you in any current live plays at the moment? You recently, relatively a time for recording, I like to caveat everything with that. You did Intimate Encounters, the Call of Cthulhu with Glass Cannon. You've done Voyages of the Jump, a Traveller thing, also with Glass Cannon. Are you working on anything else at the moment that people could see you in, or potentially look out for you in the relatively sort of near future?
Well, you can hear me. I'm on the How We Roll podcast. We've been doing Flotsam and Jetsam with them, and typical Veronica, who's also got her own stuff, and then Scott Dorward is GMing us, so it's Call of Cthulhu podcast of us. And then with Glass Cannon, that is going to be somewhere between 10 and 12 episodes for Voyagers the Jump. And we actually, at the time of recording, have just done the first one. So it's going to release in a few weeks. And that was actually just Traveler character creation.
Really?
So that one, we actually haven't even started. We just now know who our characters are. And they're, our GM's writing it up as far as what we're going to do now that he knows what his cast of characters is going to be. So that will be also videos. So those will show up on their YouTube channel and Twitch and their podcast. And that we'll be recording those, I think, through September. So that'll be an ongoing series that, at least as of now, is still coming.
Yeah. So can you tell us a little bit about your character and what it's like to be on the player side of the screen as a traveler character?
Well, I can't say much except
That's fair.
for I was at, the GM said, Matt said, look, I'd like at least one person to have a background in the Navy, and